économique entre le Canada et les États-Unis. One of the key areas we will focus on during our annual conference is municipal infrastructure, how it forms Canada's economic backbone, and how it plays a crucial role in Canada's trade agenda. Every business in this country and our exports rely on it. And in that context, I can't think of a better minister to hear from this morning than Dominic LeBlanc, Federal Minister responsible for Canada-US trade, intergovernmental affairs, internal trade, and one Canadian economy. First elected as an MP in 2000 for the riding of Beauséjour de New Brunswick, Minister LeBlanc is a member of the Liberal Party of Canada caucus, a veteran Canadian politician, and a senior cabinet minister. We're very much, and a friend to FCM, he's joined us many times before. We're very much looking to his outlook on where he sees real opportunities for municipalities and the federal government to come together and build that prosperous future. As we have all seen in the news, Minister LeBlanc is leading ongoing negotiations with the U.S. government over trade and the renewing of CUSMA agreement. And we appreciate him taking time to speak to Canada's municipalities this morning and share his perspective on the federal government's approach. Following, well, actually just right away, we're going to jump right into a fireside chat segment, and I will be asking some questions of the minister. So without further ado, I ask you to join me in giving a warm welcome to Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Good morning, Minister. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I do have a number of prepared questions, but I really know that the one that is burning on all of our minds is you have had the opportunity, maybe the pleasure, but the opportunity to dine at Mar-a-Lago, the White House. I don't know about everybody else, but for me, I just need to know, what was the menu like?
So one thing that I like about President Trump is he eats some of the things that I eat too much of, if you look at me. So at Mar-a-Lago, it sort of became a joke because I told a Canadian journalist, didn't think it would get the attention it did, but if you have a meal at Mar-a-Lago, there's actually a menu. It's a private club, so it's normally there'd be a fixed menu, but the servers bring the menu. So I had the Mary Trump meatloaf at Mar-a-Lago. It was his mother's recipe. He explained how they had that every Sunday when they were kids. And then the president, he has steak. It comes cut up. There's French fries, chocolate cake, ice cream, coconut shrimp. It's all the stuff that I eat too much of. So I'm totally at ease and totally comfortable in those settings. I take the salt and I put it on the French fries too. It's excellent. It's really very, very good.
Somewhere I am not surprised by any of that detail.
I come from New Brunswick. Onion rings are a vegetable in New Brunswick. Like in Vancouver, Rebecca, I get it. It's not cool. In New Brunswick, like if you have a big plate of onion rings, it's like very cool.
Well, I am just so glad to hear that you were at home in those conversations with President Trump. And on that, you know, we have obviously a very interesting time for us as a country, the ongoing CUSMA review and negotiations with our American counterparts. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that today. Since the start of the trade war, of course, we've learned how vulnerable we are outside, the shocks outside of our country and how that impacts Canadians. And at the same time, we've discovered that Canada, Canadians, and the Canadian economy are incredibly resilient and resourceful. So you've just returned from Washington, and you are looking well, despite what you've shared so far. We're all keen to hear your take on the state of negotiations with the U.S.
So, Rebecca, you're absolutely right. The economic uncertainty, the economic headwinds of the American tariffs create considerable disruption for businesses, big and small, all across the country. It's particularly true in certain key sectors where the Americans are applying tariffs to all their trading partners around the world. You've heard them before: steel, aluminum, softwood lumber, automobiles. It's particularly acute, and that represents hundreds of thousands of jobs in communities big and small right across the country. You're right, Canadians, in the face of that economic threat, have shown an enormous amount of pride in their country, resilience, risk-taking, businesses looking for new markets. That is very inspiring, but it doesn't eliminate the fact that geography gives us one neighbor, happens to be the biggest economy in the world. For 30 or 40 years, it was a completely reasonable thing to do, is to integrate supply chains, business relationships. And this, by the way, is exactly true for Mexico as well. I mean, there are 3 partners in this agreement. So it is tough. I'm quite confident that in the end, Rebecca, we'll get to a better place than we're in right now with these sectoral tariffs, because it's in the economic interest of the United States. They're not going to do it because they want to be nice to Canada or Mexico. They're going to make adjustments or decisions because American businesses, American labor groups, American companies are going to say to them, hey, wait a minute, like if you operate Ford Motors and all of your aluminum comes from Canada, that tariff is passed on directly to people buying F-150 trucks, right? So, moi, je suis tout à fait confiant qu'on va trouver une solution. Ce sera en très grande partie à cause du travail des entreprises canadiennes, pas seulement des politiciens canadiens, mais avec leur vis-à-vis américain. So one of the things that elected municipal leaders, and the FCM, I'm a big fan of the FCM. I was infrastructure minister for 2 years, had a chance to work very closely with elected municipal leaders across the country. I think I can't see because of the lights, but I think I have some friends in this room. But it's, yeah, that wasn't a cheap applause line. If you plant people from New Brunswick in the front row, it works. But the FCM, Rebecca, has a role to play, elected municipal leaders, because you have counterparts in the United States. You have counterparts in Mexico. There are relationships, economic, cultural, but I'm thinking of border communities in my province of New Brunswick, but it's true right across the country, across the prairie in your province of British Columbia. These American leaders have, in my view, the most important influence with the American administration, with President Trump, in talking about the benefit of having policies that are good for 3 economies. So when President Trump announced the initial reciprocal tariffs, the IEEPA is the acronym, the American legislation that the Supreme Court struck down, couple of days after they came into effect, Howard Lutnick called me and he said, Dominic, we've decided to have a carve-out for CUSMA. Well, he doesn't say CUSMA, it's USMCA, same agreement. I made the mistake of calling it CUSMA in front of Howard on the phone. Dominic, CUSMA, what's CUSMA? What are you talking about? It's USMCA, same agreement. But there's if they gave a carve-out to Canadian exports and Mexican exports, it's because it's in their economic interest to do so. So that tells me that there's somewhere a sense that there's value in this trilateral agreement. I'm confident that, and Jameson Greer, again this week, I was in Washington Tuesday, referred to those as the load-bearing walls of the trilateral agreement. What we have to do is find a way to lower the sectoral tariffs. It sounds counterintuitive. Canada currently has the best position of any one of their trading partners. But if you work in the softwood lumber industry in your province, Rebecca, or in the automobile or steel industry in Ontario, l'aluminium au Québec, et j'en passe, it doesn't feel that way. So it's not the right answer to say, oh, it's okay. We need to make progress on that. I feel better after the face-to-face meeting Tuesday, but we felt good before as well. The Prime Minister met the President. I was there last fall. we stayed behind for a week. Prime Minister joked to Michael Sabia and me, he said, you guys are going to check into some really shitty motel in rural Virginia. He said, it's called incentive alignment. He said, you'll want to get a deal so you can get the hell out of there. I thought, guess what? I went back this week and I didn't go to that terrible motel in Virginia. So, I'm convinced that we can find a way to get to a better place, but we're not going to trade away things that are important to Canada just to get a seat in another room. So you don't. And I appreciate the applause, but let's think of the softwood lumber workers and the auto workers. We all have that emotional reaction. It's good, but we have to figure out a way together to support those industries through no fault of their own that have this headwind.
Well, that is an excellent segue, and you touched on already, over the last 18 months, FCM has been engaging in our U.S. counterpart municipal associations numerous times. I think more than 6 or 8 times we've been down there to their various conferences just like this. And it's been a really important opportunity to deliver the message that local communities on both sides of the border are stronger as a result of free trade. And so that message is resonating. From first meeting that I was in to even just recently, we're hearing, and we have heard over the past year, the tone of municipalities strengthening themselves to push up and back on these tariffs. So at the same time, municipalities, of course, are working to help local businesses deliver and attract new investment, which is, I think, a intended or unintended consequence of what we're facing in the past year. To you, what does the Team Canada approach look like at this point in the trade war? And a quick follow-up to that is, how can Canadians work together to ensure that we do emerge from this stronger? You see a light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how far off it is or feels at different times.
And what's the joke? The light at the end of the tunnel can't be the train coming in, right?
Well, that's a very good point. So what does that Team Canada approach look like now at this point?
So, Rebecca, very good question, and you're right. The Team Canada approach involves all 3 orders of government. So, the Government of Canada, provinces and territories, but it necessarily involves the municipal order of government. So, and for obvious reasons, you said it well. The economy of the country in many ways passes through towns and cities and villages across the country. The municipal sector is a key part of the procurement economy of the country. I'm inspired every time municipal leaders, provincial leaders, we're trying to do the same thing, make a deliberate decision to buy Canadian, to privilege Canadian suppliers, Canadian materials made with by Canadian workers. So we have to continue to do that. The Americans are doing the same thing. But they still say to us, oh, these procurement policies are terrible. Sure, if we weren't facing the economic headwind, let's have a conversation. But people are naturally doing this to protect the economy in communities across the country. And you said it well, there's a resilience. Il y a un appétit que je trouve tout à fait inspirant d'aller chercher de nouveaux investisseurs, de diversifier des marchés d'exportation. Ça peut être des petites compagnies locales qui développent des relations avec des fournisseurs dans d'autres pays, comme ça peut être des plus grandes sociétés qui se tournent vers l'Asie ou l'Europe. The Prime Minister says to us, and the election campaign a year ago was focused on this, we need to build big at home. So that means we need to make it easier to build infrastructure that makes our economy more competitive, that diversifies our trading opportunities. You're from British Columbia. Your province is a gateway to the Pacific region, growing economies. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs all across the country that will benefit by getting the right trading relationships accelerated with many of those economies that now more than ever want to do business with Canada. But it's true on all three coasts of the country. It's true in northern Canada. There's some infrastructure opportunities there that can revolutionize. There's a dual use. It's good for the national security of our country, the Arctic security that leaders from the north talk to us about, but it's also true as part of that diversification agenda. I think municipalities need to continue, and the Government of Canada with provinces and territories has to be a key partner in this. But look at the industries that are under pressure now. Let's be sure that we support those workers and those businesses that find themselves in this turbulence, not because they ran bad businesses or because they had a bad product or because their workforce wasn't good. Somebody in another country decided to change, to unscramble the omelet, right? For 30 years, we could order the omelet, and now somebody shows up and says, I'd like to turn that omelet into eggs over easy. Well, guess what? You're going to break more eggs to get those eggs over easy. It's not going to be the omelet you just ordered. So for 30 years, everybody thought it would be okay. Guess what? It's not. And the country has to stick together as we work through this. And municipal leaders are so close to communities, and you represent communities, big and small, in every part of the country. I think it's an essential partner for the Government of Canada.
Well, yes, I think that is a very welcomed perspective. We can see the theme of our conference, building the future together. You mentioned building. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how we do build our country together. Canadians are looking for progress that they can see and feel, the tangible outcomes in our communities. And so municipal leaders, as you see a full room here, are ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work. We're ready to build, from housing to infrastructure to how do we make our streets safer. What does that strategic partnership look like to you as we enter the second year of the government's now majority mandate?
You want to say that again? This majority mandate. Doesn't that sound good, Rebecca?
I saw you smile as I just finished that question.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it at all, the way you said it. So my colleague, Gregor Robertson, who I first met when he was the elected mayor of Vancouver, many of you knew him from that service, is a key part and a terrific colleague, and is doing very good work for our government. I hope in partnership with municipalities, certainly in New Brunswick. He's been very active and present. I know it's true across the country. It never moves as fast as we all want it to, but we can all lean in and keep pushing together. So there's a basic infrastructure part of your question, Rebecca, around how can the Government of Canada be a financial partner, but also in a way that speaks to the development you want in your communities. So you have elected municipal councils that set priorities and have a long-term plan for the economy and the social fabric of the people, of the communities you represent, and you were elected to govern. The Government of Canada should be a complementary part of that exercise, should be a complementary partner. The one thing that I've been elected enough times, as many of you have been, the same people that vote for all of you vote for us. If they see governments hassling between each other and saying, well, it's not us, it's actually the city, or you know what, we're happy to do it, but the province is bad. The public patience for that was always very low, and it's now zero. And so good, I'm sensing from municipal leaders that I talk to and provincial premiers. I'm also the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, talk to premiers often and frequently and accompany the Prime Minister in a lot of his meetings with premiers. Everybody wants to focus on quick results. So Gregor will talk about the sort of traditional Canada province municipal order of government infrastructure funds. I have the responsibility for the Major Projects Office, the One Canadian Economy. In some cases, those are big infrastructure projects as well, but in some cases, it's incentivizing private investment back to one of your earlier questions, Rebecca, how can we work with municipalities, private businesses, and provinces to say, okay, there's a big resource project, there's a super interesting offshore wind project in Nova Scotia, which would become like the giant green battery for Atlantic Canada, and there'd have to be interties to take that renewable energy from offshore Nova Scotia into Quebec and Ontario. So there's an example of a giant clean energy project that could help fuel Canadian economic competitiveness for a long time. It's just one that's close to my heart, but everybody's thinking of their own regional or even local examples. There's some port infrastructure in your province, like on the East Coast, like, as I said, in the North. My colleague Steve McKinnon is very, very active on figuring out the bottlenecks. When I learned about the Port of Vancouver, critical, I forget the huge percentage of Canadian exports that leave that port. Somebody told you there's a single rail line across one older bridge that brings so much of that Canadian GDP to emerging markets. Like, there's an example of the congestion in the Lower Mainland. We speak to the provincial government, and I know the municipal government, and Gregor has his eye on this stuff. I'm just thinking of examples where the three orders of government can say, okay, there's a critical housing context, there's a context for people who are homeless, or you see it in communities big and small. Gregor will talk about that. But we also can work on projects, infrastructure and larger investment projects that'll create well-paying, diversified jobs across the country, where we have to partner with municipalities as well. So it's sort of the economic diversification agenda, and then there's the social and infrastructure responsibilities that we would have together in communities, big and small, across the country.
So we have a few more minutes, and I think you're touching on the what, and I think we all are in agreement that there's a really strong case for us to work together, for us to tie national, nation-building projects to local investment. How do you see the strategic role of investing in local infrastructure as a nation-building priority, as you've outlined, in the years ahead, and particularly when it comes to municipal trade-enabling infrastructure? You touch on the Port of Vancouver, you touch on the roads, you touch on congestion. I think what's of interest...
I didn't mention your tunnel under the Fraser River.
The tunnel that goes under the river that's up for renewal. So, and that is similar right across the country, in every community of all sizes. So as well as multi-use infrastructure that we've talked about, in addition to roads, bridges, and ports, there's also the element that advances the national defense, which you touched on. So how can we accelerate this work together, knowing that we agree on the what, and it is the how in terms of where we're going to go from here? So we're sitting here next year, annual conference, saying this is what we got done.
Critical question, a very good question, Rebecca. One thing, if Canadians are understandably not interested in governments sort of not working constructively together, they're also impatient with politicians, and I can say that because there's a room full of them here. You may not like it, but all of you are politicians too, like me, that talk about things, and then a year later, 2 years later, they can't see those projects and those investments actually coming to fruition and getting built. So therein lies the urgency that you referred to. We share that urgency. A lot of it, we're trying on our side to deal with some of the federal approvals that just got longer and longer and heavier and heavier. We need to do the environmental assessments properly and rigorously. We need to consult with Indigenous rights holders. It's a constitutional and an important obligation for governments. None of this diminishes that, but it is also true that on the federal government side, if you need a permit from Environment Canada, from the Coast Guard, from Fisheries and Oceans, from another federal regulator, they don't have to be done sequentially. They can be done at the same time. So if you apply for a particular permit, instead of taking 5 years, it might actually take 1 year to get to the right answer. And the right answer hopefully is yes. In some cases it'll be yes, but all of that process needs to be expedited. But we need also to recognize that provincial governments and municipal governments also have very good processes to approve many of these projects. And why do we double the effort? So if the city of Vancouver or the province of British Columbia has done work to ascertain certain environmental conditions, land use planning is properly a municipal jurisdiction, but the Government of Canada shouldn't stick its fingers in that process. We should be happy to say that, look, you guys have a responsibility to do this work well. We trust it. It's about trusting each other. It's also, the Prime Minister said that to provinces. We're signing agreements with provinces, including ones that you thought might be more resistant than others. Those provinces are saying, let's have one project, one review. And we need to bolt on the proper municipal oversight that takes place as well. So we're all working sort of consecutively or, concurrently. Not we're working, I got in late last night from Ottawa. We're all working concurrently to get to the right answer. And we don't put, a friend of mine in New Brunswick says, we just keep putting more snow in front of the plow. Well, people are fed up with that. Let's figure out a way to do the work we have to do properly, but together.
Absolutely, and municipalities are ready to deliver on that. I'm gonna end us on a question with hopefully a brief but I know impactful answer, because municipal leaders from coast to coast to coast, including in Alberta, are deeply invested in building not just infrastructure, but a shared sense of belonging and opportunity. So to complete our fireside today, I just want to leave you with a question, and hopefully you.
There's actually no fire, right? Like
no,
it's a fireside chat, Rebecca.
It's
if there was a fire, we wouldn't be chatting.
If it was to get fiery, then we could. No, let's not. Let's not do that. So how can we work with you to bring Canadians together and ensure growth and confidence are felt in every community?
So a critical question. We're in the capital of the great province of Alberta today. I know there are elected municipal leaders from every corner of this province. I can say as an Atlantic Canadian, I am super proud of the economy of Western Canada and Alberta in particular, because the economy in this province is good for the whole country. So we should say that. I believe it. We should not. And maybe we didn't say it enough. The economic success of Alberta, and it can be British Columbia, it can be Saskatchewan, but it's true all across the country, but we're in Alberta, let's say it about Alberta. Having a dynamic, growing economy that diversifies Canada's trading relationships around the world is good for the economy in every part of the country, and it's absolutely true in Alberta. And it starts with trusting one another. So as I said, I think there's great work done in every province and every municipality in terms of what are the economic projects, the economic investments that will provide good jobs, better homes, will look after some long-standing social inequities. Municipal and provincial leaders have a line of sight on that the Government of Canada should embrace, and we should say, okay, how can we partner with you to put adrenaline into that work you're doing? So the Prime Minister's agreement with Premier Smith in Alberta is an important part of that. The implementation agreement speaks to working together. But I'm talking to the Premier. I was with the Prime Minister in your city, Rebecca, a couple of weeks ago. We met Premier Eby. We talked about joint work that we can do that's important to the citizens in British Columbia. I was with the Prime Minister when we met premiers in Atlantic Canada. So we're doing that work in every part of the country, but I think we should all celebrate the fact that this province that you chose to have your annual gathering in is a key part of the economic and social agenda of the whole country. And I'm certainly proud as somebody from the other side of the country, from the East Coast, to acknowledge that. I see it every week on the airplanes between Moncton and Montreal, the travelers who come and work in the resource industry here and come back and invest their money in other parts of the country. That's fueled the economy of the country for a long time, and we should start by acknowledging that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We could chat a lot more, I know, and I'm very grateful. We're very grateful for your time, Minister, coming to spend with us and just have a real straight conversation about where things are at. I think you've left us with a lot to consider and be hopeful for, and we look forward to ongoing conversations. So please join me in thanking the Minister for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed the opportunity to hear from Minister LeBlanc. It was very good of him to take the time. It's a busy time, obviously, given the responsibilities that he has, but a wonderful opportunity to get a little